All right, it's time for another segment of the online dinner party. And of course, this segment, we're going to be dealing with something that I know a lot of people are thinking about on a regular basis. And that is that whole concept of worry. That's right. A lot of people are worrying about a lot of things and a lot of things in their life. Everything from finances to, of course, health issues. We were in the middle. And some people say that we're still very much in the middle of this whole pandemic and all along those lines. And of course, people are worrying about their jobs and their economics and a number of other factors as well. But we've got an amazing guest that is going to tell us ways that we can stop doing all this worrying, even though a lot of people are looking at the world and are fretting about what's going on in the world. Sometimes they use spirituality or healing to help them get through some of their worries. Sometimes they use meditation. And of course, we do know that sometimes people will try to use other ways to get out of the worrying mode as well. And some folks will say that worrying is just a natural part of life and that you always have to worry one way or the other. And then, of course, there's that always that fun expression that people talk about people being worry warts and all in that space. But we're going to have a very deep conversation about how folks can do a better job of dealing with all that we are dealing with and all in that space. So I'm going to bring in Valerie Galloway. Had the pleasure of meeting her through some of the podcast services that I am very much aware of and all along those lines. So we're going to hear more about what she's got to say because it does seem like more and more of us are just constantly worrying and always worrying about this or that. I know some people that were worrying in the middle of this month because of March Madness. Their team might not have done that well, so then they got all worried and all fretting about how their basketball team was doing. And then some folks might have got elated because there were some unexpected teams, including Florida Atlantic, that have made it into the Final Four. I think the final ticket is being punched very shortly, and we do know that the Final Four will be coming our way, and a lot of folks will be very happy about that also. So I was just wondering your thoughts and how you even got into this whole notion of trying to lead a worry-free life. So I'm thinking that at one point you were probably one of those people that was being too much of a worry wart and all in that space. But then you had a enlightenment moment. It's like, wait a minute, this is adding too much stress, and we do know that they say that stress is very detrimental to our health and all in that space. But I'd love to hear your stories as to how you got involved in the whole notion of making us better individuals, but particularly yourself a better individual.
Okay. Well, once again, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here. So I want to say first of all, Mark, that I come more from a perspective of spirituality when it comes to worry. So I want to add a disclaimer here because my own perspective on worry may only resonate with those with a faith belief, perhaps,
Yeah.
especially in Christianity. I'm a Christian,
Mhm.
and therefore having an awareness and understanding of the dark powers and the principalities the Bible often speaks on,
Yeah.
the spirits that are malevolent spiritual beings that exist with us in this fallen world. So I'm equating our worries to that element, those entities. And so these entities are opposing forces, I feel, that are roaming around in the spirit realm that is what we associate with worry, and these beings are real. Their only purpose is to wield destruction as a form of revenge. So I believe worry starts from spiritual. It has a spiritual base to it. So I want to start with a question. Have you ever felt completely stressed out? I know I have. Have you ever experienced total overwhelm or a lack of control, what feels like a lack of control over your life? Well, all these situations cause worry, and we all experience it. I don't know a single soul that doesn't experience worry, right? So, but
Yeah.
what if we could free ourselves from worry, like you said, and enjoy peace of mind? I think it's important, Mark, to decipher why we as humans have a tendency to overly obsess. We tend to overthink. We tend to ruminate with worry. And I guess it's important first to understand the origin, what I believe is the origin. And there's an element of uncertainty at the root core of worry, I feel. And that's what causes the anxiety and the stress around worry. I also believe, like I said, there's spiritual powers of the unseen world That's the main cause. And so my mindset and empowerment coaching website and mantra is called Breaking the Chains That Bind You. And it represents freedom from worry, from all our self-imposed inner prisons, because we all tend to suffer from our worries and woes, and that as humans we tend to enslave ourselves in with our worries and our vices and our addictions and our emotional baggage, which leads to these types of bondages. So, whether it's bondages of worry, depression, loss, ill health, addiction, etc., etc., the list is endless. I believe spiritual principalities and powers are behind it all. So, freeing ourselves from the clutches of what's controlling us is, to me, the end goal. And I believe the opposite of worry is freeing ourselves first from our own mindsets. A worry free person who's kind of learned how to self regulate their emotions, their everyday, feelings, and learned how to wield off this energy force to sustain a state of constant peace of mind as a result. So again, as a Christian, my perspective is more spiritually based. And so, I like to help people find salvation. And we're all spiritual beings. We live and operate in a spiritual realm. And why is this relevant? Well, everything in the world has an energetic field to it. Our bodies transmit a vibrational energy force. Our hair, our clothes, everything has energy to it, and including our emotions, which also emit energy into the atmosphere, into the universe. And most people don't even realize, we have complete power and dominion over the spiritual energy force and realm we all live in. And so, well, the good news is our inner spirit being and guide, the Holy Spirit within, gives us complete dominion and power through our free will to control our mindsets and our every emotion and action that we feel. We all have the ability to thwart and ward off our worries.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You were saying a couple of things that were resonating, and I was interested in your thoughts about them and everything, because I do know that a lot of folks are very much in this day and time that we're in, paying attention to their spiritual journey and how that spiritual journey is going. I do know a number of my friends that consider themselves light warriors, people that definitely resonate more with the light side than the dark side, and it definitely tried to encourage that, and they are seeing maybe a positive transition where the light warriors are having more of an active way of governing things and making things more positive, even though we've gone through some deep tragedy, some of which I alluded to earlier and everything. But I'm just wondering your thoughts around the notion of light warriors and whether there are a number of individuals out here that are working for the positive of the light and the positive of the God force and all along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Mark, it's all tied into our own inner spiritual, whatever perspective we're coming from in terms of our own beliefs. And so, well, as a Christian, I know there are principalities and powers in the Bible that are known as different levels of demonic spirits that roam in this spiritual realm. And their primary goal is to kill, steal, and destroy us. That's what it says in the Bible. And their malicious intent includes tormenting our souls with aggravation, with harassment, irritation, confusion, frustration, and worry. And so, well, what does this mean? Well, we all have complete authority and power, however, and ability to evict them from around us. And most people don't realize that. And that, the people that you're speaking of have that ability. And so, we have the power to reject that negative energy to manifest our own positive outcomes. We get to choose what we manifest in our lives, whether we choose positive outcomes or submit to our negative outcomes, in this case, worry. We have the power overall to decide. We get to loosen and free ourselves from the bondage of torment, which is worry, from all the offenses, the negative powers in the air, that the enemy tries to control us with.
No, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things I was wondering about, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, is some people, and it may be one of those worries that we're talking about, are concerned that there are things that they can control that they're add to their worry, but there are other things that they can't control. Because we all know the story of the family members that are um, not as close as they should be, and in some cases, maybe even the family members are not serving the right side of the battle between good and evil, and all along those lines. And there's that old saying that you can divorce your wife, or you can do, even in some cases, separate yourself from your parents or your kids, but you can't always divorce all members of your family, and all in that space. Because we do know that there are family members that might be involved in things like drugs, or involved in other uh, very detrimental acts, both to themselves as well as to society at large, and even their community, their own personal communities and everything. So, what do you say to those that are wanting to sever the ties with those that are less than beneficial for them, but that they are worried that if they do that, they will cut off part of their own existence?
Yeah, I mean, this touches my heart because it speaks to my own personal experience. I just wrote a book on this, and I named it Addiction, Still Kill and Destroy. And, the book is based on, it's a biographical book based on someone that was very dear in my heart. And so, yeah, when we're dealing with family members, friends, these types of relationships where um, you know, this type of stress and worry is a constant for us. Yeah, it is difficult. But what I guess what I'm trying mostly to convey, Mark, is that we have the power, right, to change that dynamic. And it all stems from our mindsets. It's important to understand everything stems from our own mindsets, the way we think. Our actions are controlled by our own mindset, and this is where our paradigms are stored, right? This is a set way of thinking and operating in the world. And so our thoughts and emotions and actions originate from the subconscious mind. And oftentimes this is where all our childhood stories and woes are embedded. That there are psychological tapes of woes and trauma. They're all ingrained in the subconscious mind. So learning how to express to those loved ones how to utilize their higher faculties to control their emotions. The higher faculties being reasoning, imagination, perception, will, intuition, memory, because the mindset can either help or hinder our emotional progress and development and growth. So helping our loved ones understand that concept, I believe, is key.
And that makes a lot of sense. Everything, one of the things that people oftentimes worry about, and I know we're using that word quite a bit on this particular show and everything, is worrying about their health. And a lot of people were concerned about their health during the pandemic. And I know that one of the biggest fears that folks have is, a lot of times we are mortal beings. We all know that we're mortal beings. We know our birthdays. None of us really know our end date, and all in that space. And a lot of times, as a friend of mine has put it, the most important part is the dash between those 2 years, meaning what are you doing as you are a living being? But a lot of people are concerned about the end and what the end will bring them. Sometimes, even if they are spiritual or deeply Christian, they are hoping that the story and the narrative is correct, but they're not always 100% sure. And then there is that worry as well. So, how do you address those folks that are worrying about that sense of mortality? Because that is one of the biggest worries I think that people have from the time that they're born until the time that they die.
Yeah. Um, I guess when it comes to our own lives, for me, it's a matter of, when we come to that major crossroad in our lives, where we need to make these kinds of decisions. I feel it's time to get out your spreadsheet and take stock of your life. You need to weigh what is working in your life and what is no longer working in your life. And I think it's important that we should all get to a point where we evaluate, where is our lives compromised? Is it our health? Like, is it our relationships, our emotional well-being, our finances, our occupation, time, freedom, our faith? I feel we have to, get to a point where we realize, like you said, time is short. Tomorrow's not promised to any one of us. And I think most of us take that for granted. And so, for me, I can speak for me personally. I started after like within the last 6 years, Mark, I've lost three significant beings. And, of course, a lot of us lost folks around this pandemic. And so, that's cause for us all to really think about our lives, I think. And for me, what I did was I wrote a book. I resourced up, I invested in self-development courses and trainings, and I sort of got introduced to what I call modern day thought leaders. The Mary Morrises of the world, the Bob Proctor, the Tony Robbins, the Life on Fire Christian community, their business consultation team, and the like. And I just discovered that they pretty much everyone nowadays, the thought leaders, are subscribing to the power of positive thinking. So to me, it revolves around how, again, the power of the mindset. We need to deprogram ourselves. We get into this set way of thinking, right, that we don't realize how it's controlling us. And so I feel like you have to learn how to deprogram your mindset from the hard drive. We have a hard drives, that's the paradigms in our minds, that pretty much is controlling our lives. And if it's not serving us, we need to really reevaluate that. Like today, kids of today, they want the latest technological gadgets, right? My son practically badgered and bullied me to upgrade him from PS4 to PS5 for his Christmas gift, right? So to me, it's the same ideology that exists with our mindsets. Our mindsets are just like a computer. They Mindsets need to be upgraded, like how computers need to be upgraded monthly to run efficiently. We need to upgrade our outdated, pre-programmed subconscious mindsets from the old way of thinking for change to actually occur.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've got to do one other quick break, but I'm going to give you a full screen to give this next answer and everything along those lines. But how can we develop positive mindset and positive thought and all along those lines? Because I'm sure you have some suggestions of ways that you would think that folks should go about doing positive mindset and even creating that positive mindset. Because I know a lot of times people are saying that they want to think positive and they want to create personal goals, but it's like those New Year's resolutions. I think a lot of times we state them, but we don't always get them the way that we would like to get them. So I'd love to hear your thoughts around some action items that our listeners can have in order to develop that positive mindset. And I'll come back with a few more questions as you elaborate on that and everything.
Okay. So yeah, interestingly, for me, I started to see a correlation um, in the Bible. um, I started to see the teachings from the Bible in terms of the biblical principles and the ideologies and the thoughts and the concepts around, what is taught in the Bible.
And what are some of the
So
ways
yeah,
that you're looking
I
at?
started to say, Mark, that for me, as a Christian, how I tied, I don't know if I still see you. Hello?
All right, there. I was
I
asking if you could give
Can you
some
hear me?
specific. Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm not sure if you can hear me, Mark.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes,
Oh,
yes, I hear
okay.
you.
Okay. So as I was saying, interestingly enough, for me, um, in terms of how I uh, processed everything, I started to see a correlation in the teachings to the many biblical principles, the ideologies and thoughts and concepts that we find in the Bible. I connected it to how we, again, ought to be utilizing our higher faculties. So it really has a lot to do with bringing our subconscious mind into the consciousness, right? Which is, I feel, instrumental and ultimately determines the course of our lives. So it's kind of like I'm saying, getting in touch with your mindsets. Like, for example, in the Bible, it talks about mind renewal, which is Romans 12:2. And it talks about we actually have power in the tongue. So when you think about it, biblically, God created the world in 7 days, right? And how did he do it? He did it by speaking life into existence. And so when Jesus ascended back to heaven, he instilled in all of the believers the Holy Spirit. And so we have power. What I'm trying to convey is we all have that power within, and people don't recognize that we have power and we can speak it just like God did through the power of the tongue, and act what we want for our lives through our own ability to speak it. And so learning to take control through our thought processes to direct the way we think and operate is key. So the lesson I feel is paradigms. We got to control the way we think and subsequently act. Our paradigms have complete power to dictate our life circumstances and how we think and feel, including worrying. So listening to our higher faculties, our intuition in particular, because that's the Holy Spirit within. That's what helped me take back control of my life. It helped pivot me and redirect me. And again, I was able to tap into my own, where I've come, how far I've come in life and transition through my imagination. And I was able to discover my creative abilities side and my talents and all that I had within to impart and thus discover my purpose in the process. So you've got to, I guess I'm saying you've got to sort of get to a point where you see the power that you have within yourself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and you've definitely got to get those things going on in that sense and everything. What is one of the biggest things that you find that people worry too much about? I named some of those that I think people worry too much about. But what are some of the things that you find people worry too much about that you wish that they would gather control of and worry less about?
Yeah, I think it's, people worry a lot about money. Let's face it, it's finances, especially after, what we've just cut the season we've just come out of. Many people lost their jobs. A lot of people had to sort of reinvent themselves. We're living in such, I call it intense times, and, for me, you asked me the question earlier, what suggestions would I have? The basic, find a quiet space, to zen, deep breaths to help you decompress, pray, find ways to increase your own awareness and listen to your body, talk it out with friends, journal, meditation, just getting that energy out by doing something active, hobbies, music, just self-evaluation, self-reflection.
Why do you think that some people have a better luck dealing with worry than others when it comes to society? I know that I think it was recently released that Finland is still one of the happiest countries in the world. I know that there are other parts of the world that are very happy as well. The United States doesn't always do that well with that and everything. I do pick up your accent, so I figure that you must be from another part of the world as well. And I'm not sure whether it's one of the happiness places or not. But why do you think that happiness resonates with certain parts of the world better than other parts, and worry seems to be more of the norm in other parts of the world versus
Yeah.
others?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I could actually speak from coming from. So I was born and raised in Oxford, England. I came here fresh out of high school, right? And I just instantly sensed the difference between the two cultures. And what was so apparent to me, Mark, was exactly what you're talking about. In coming from England, so I grew up in an era where now, I'm just going to say this. I didn't experience the race component, and I'm talking about my own personal experience in England. It was more about class consciousness. Growing up in my era, it was all about class. You were either high class, middle class, or lower class, right? And we all lived next to one another. We weren't perceived as a threat, right? So the energy to me was a lot more relaxed. People had basic jobs and they were content. I came to this country, and the first thing I noticed was it was more of a race conscious country, and so there was a vibe of intensity, not just about the race, but just this culture here. There's more of an intensity to it, and that's pretty much been my experience in terms of living in the two worlds. In England, it was a lot more carefree, a lot more relaxed. But I will say, why did I come here? Just like everyone else, there's a lot more opportunities here. So, it's a weighing scale for me. What is more important, to have a better job? Because I was middle class, I wasn't upper class, I wasn't lower class, but the opportunities weren't so prevalent for me, at least, growing up, until I came here. Honestly, I don't think I would have a master's degree, two coaching licenses, had I remained in England as a middle class, member of society. So there's a trade off here. You come here, but you get into this work world, and there's a lot of stress that goes along with that.
One of the questions I had for you was very much about outside forces in society, because I know a lot of times people will worry about the outside forces in society as well, because we've also heard people that are worrying about what the police are doing, what the government is doing, what a number of other folks are doing as well. So how do we address that if we are thinking about worrying? Because a lot of times people are concerned about like how they're being treated. You just mentioned the cultural situation, if they're being treated differently by the police than they are if they are dark complexion versus light complected or anything along those lines. So I was just wondering, how do we deal with uh, the worry that some people have about things that are outside of their control? Because, like I said, we can't dictate how the police are going to react to us, and we can't dictate how other folks are going to react to us. So, what are some of the ways that you encourage people to maybe still have thoughts and passions about these issues, but still not let it weigh them down? That's what I was looking
Yeah.
for.
Yeah, yeah. Education, I think it's all about education in this day and age, and just finding ways to understand each other, culturally, and have more empathy and compassion. Especially given the fact that there's a lot of crime in this world, and I don't condone it. But there's not a lot of jobs for everyone, and so finding ways to help one another, pull each other up as opposed to dragging each other down. I What automatically comes to mind is that old, the theory of the crabs in the basket. You know,
Mhm.
People are not so apt to pulling their colleagues up anymore. It's like,
Right.
we're all vying for these limited jobs. And so, yeah, I think finding ways to increase employment would help, and just working together as a community.
That makes a lot of sense. We definitely have to work together as a community. I know another thing that people think about, even with the life coaching aspect, is a number of folks are seeing life coaches, career coaches, and a number of other kinds of coaches out there, and there was a time that folks were like, "Wait a minute, do I need all these coaches? I know I need a coach because you need coaches in life. You can't really live life without having a coach, whether you're going to have a child." And I've been fortunate not to have any of those, but I do have my two nephews, and all in that space that came from my brother and his second wife, and all in that kind of way. But I just wondering, um, what is your thoughts around coaching, and or is there a abundance of coaches, and or do we get to the point where we're almost at the saturation point with coaches?
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I think, it has become a market that's become very saturated, and therein lies the crabs in the basket theory. So yeah, I think coaching is important. Most people sort of don't fully understand the difference between therapy, like a therapist, and a
Right.
coach. So a coach is more forward thinking. Right? A coach is there to help guide you towards your goals and objectives. And I think what happened, Mark, was when this pandemic occurred, people had to find ways to, you know, to survive financially. And so everyone became a coach. you know, because everything was online and you had to find a job. And yeah, so I'm noticing there's a lot more coaches out in the world today, and some are certified, and majority aren't. Does that mean that they don't know, how the basic precepts of coaching? We're all coaches when you think about it. We all give advice. Not that coaching is about advice, because that's the difference between coaching and therapy. Therapy is more, dealing with issues from your past, psychological issues, let's say, whereas coaching is helping to move you forward from that.
Yeah, that makes a
So
lot of sense.
yeah.
What do you say for those folks that are, we've seen a lot of people that have gone through new iterations of jobs. So you kind of alluded to it earlier, but there are a number of people that are out there getting uh, gig jobs, and sometimes they're doing that in order to make the money that they need in order to survive. And sometimes that can add to their worrying and their fretting and everything. And then we also know that a number of remote jobs were out there and hybrid jobs out there as well. Hybrid meaning you spent all part of your time at home in front of the computer, and part of it maybe at an office situation or something along those lines, or in a school situation, part of it on the computer and part of it in the classroom. But I was just wondering how much of that has added in your mindset to people's worrying, and what advice do you give to folks in those job situations? Because I do know that that is another stress point, is people are oftentimes worried about their jobs. Maybe they don't get along with their boss or their coworkers, and then they're fretting about that individual, because sometimes you're in a collective environment, so you don't always have. It's kind of like the family situation, but even a family is more tightly controlled. But sometimes the job and the resources you need from the job are, I guess, worth the stress that you have to put up with the job and all in that space. So I'm just wondering, how do you deal with that when people come to you with
Yeah.
those kind of issues?
Yeah. Well, times have changed, and I feel like, kind of similarly to what I was saying about the mindset, we have to change with the times. Unfortunately, I think, for people, I'm an old timer, so I'm somewhat set in my ways too, to some degree. But in order to stay current, you have no choice. You have to change with the times. And so what's happening is jobs are now becoming more remote,
Mhm.
and therein lies the competitiveness. And somehow, we've all got to find a way to exist in this current day and age, where things are constantly changing. Change is inevitable, and if you don't change along with it, then you're going to get left behind. You're going to get
Yeah.
left behind. And this world is a pretty dog eat dog world. And you gotta figure out how to survive in it, one way
Yeah.
or another. You have no choice.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I know a lot of parents have been getting worried about the devices that their children have, and sometimes it seems like it is causing too much stress in the family. You kind of alluded to it with what you were going through with your son, but I know I've been out to eating establishments, and sometimes you'll see the entire family having dinner, but they're all on individual devices talking to their friends and family and their friends and acquaintances, and they're
Yeah.
not really having true family time. And we do know that there are a number of folks that have been really admiring and really enjoying the benefits of some of the newer aspects of the internet, whether that's Web3 or whether that's augmented reality or a number of other kinds of ways that people are engaging in society in that way. So I was just wondering, as a life coach, what are some of the things that you are telling folks about that, and how are you addressing that, and does that play a part in some of the worry aspects of what the book is about?
Yeah, well, again, I can speak from my own experience. So I have an 11-year-old son, and what I'm noticing is the difference between what I found fun at 11 years old and what the kids of today find fun, and gone are the days and I'm about to date myself here, but gone are the days when we used to skip rope, play hopscotch. Did you ever play hopscotch? Do you know what
I
that
remember,
is?
yeah, yeah, I know how hopscotch is. Yeah, so
Yeah, hopscotch, rope skipping, just going out to the park. I mean, hanging out with friends. These kids today, they barely leave the house. They are, if you allow them, they will stay on that device 24/7. So for me personally, I don't let my son, I call it tech time. I'm very adamant that I monitor and I limit set. He can only go on his PS5 for 1 hour. And I just started this. He wasn't even able to get on that device throughout the whole school week until the weekend. So I think as parents, we have to sort of take back control of that, and really limit set, because what's happening is this is where they're finding all their socialization, and they're becoming introverted as a result. And I think parents see it more as a way, to babysit, so we can get our chores done, but in the end, ultimately, I feel it's gonna have a detrimental impact on our kids, because they're turning inwards, and we're not being mindful of that as parents,
no,
most of
I'm
us.
glad, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things that I'm hearing studies are saying is that more and more of our young people, like I said, I do have a 13 and a 14, they'll be 14 and 15 this coming August and everything, nephews. And I do know, as far as I can tell, they're very much engaged because they do go out and play some sports, and they do things other than the computer. But I do know that there is a big worry about the kids of today, and there is a big worry about the amount of depression and bullying that is going on as well. So I was just wondering your thoughts around that, and if that is something that might be of concern to somebody that is basically become almost like a worry expert, because it does seem to me that the future for our kids, and I've actually read a study recently that said that I want to say 70 to 80% of people think that their kids will actually be worse off than they will, and everything, which is a scary fact, because usually we want the opposite. We want to think that the next generation is going to be better off, but and those figures may not be exact, but they were definitely astronomical, and they were definitely high in that sense, where folks were worried that the future was not going to be pleasant and maybe even downright scary for their
Yeah.
offsprings and their
Yeah.
grandkids, should they be fortunate enough to have them. So I just wondering your thoughts around that.
Yeah. Well, again, Mark, I feel like this all goes back to the spirituality piece, right? And I'm gonna just say it. It's Satan, to me, is indoctrinating our kids into a realm of um, taking control of their mindsets, right? And so they're not realizing that this spiritual realm that we're living in is in essence taken, Satan is known as the prince of the air, right? So this world that we live in, this secular dark fallen world, is really essentially being controlled by the enemy. And so, and this is why I see it in my own child. He gets down and depressed if I don't allow him to get onto that contraption. And I mean, really dark, depression, it seems to me. And to me, that's the enemy reeling them in slowly but surely. It's like brainwashing almost. And as parents, we need to take back control. We need to sit down with our kids and pray over them, because it's good versus evil. We live in a world of good versus evil. And so if we are not mindful and we don't really pay attention to how the enemy operates, we could potentially lose our children. I see, like you said, on the news every day, there's kids that are, suicidal, and actually acting it out. And I believe this world that we're living, this technological world we're living in, is incorporating our kids in this dark realm, this spiritual realm, and we need to take back control.
Yeah. What do you say to those folks? And I know you're a deeply spiritual person that are worried about the state of the church and the fact that the church doesn't seem to be as involved as it probably should be. We do know that there are a number of cases where the church has not done enough in the sense of housing. Not saying all churches, but some of them, and definitely in
Yeah.
some of the other things that are out there as well. So, what do you say to those that are concerned that they are also seeing a drop in church attendance and also just
Yeah.
religion in general?
Yeah, I think for me, Mark, it's a matter of finding a church that's biblically based. You don't want to attend a church just for the sake of I went to church. You need to find a church that speaks from the Bible, because that's where you're getting today's wisdom, or should be, I feel, getting today's wisdom. And so not all churches are Bible based. We have a lot of mega churches today that they sing a lot of pretty songs, and I'm not knocking them. As long as you have a belief in something, that's your prerogative. But for me personally, I think the root of finding peace, joy, love, and happiness revolves around having a relationship with Christ.
Yeah,
And
that
so,
makes
yeah, finding a church that more specifically speaks from the Bible at the pulpit is the direction I feel people should go in.
right. And I know that there have been some people that are also just when they look at the global world and Pod TV is a global network, they're like, definitely there is a number of folks that are in the Christian faith, but there are a number of other faiths out there as well. So, and some of them also fret over different issues also. So I was just wondering, does your message resonate with folks that may not be in the Christian community, be they from a Yoruba religion or a Buddhist or a
Yeah,
Hindu or a Muslim or something like that? So do you find that some of the message
yeah.
that you're teaching can resonate with people outside of the Christian community?
Well, I'm always I'm always mindful, Mark, of the fact that we don't all believe in the same principles, and I can only speak from my own perspective in terms of what I believe in, but I do have respect for others that have belief systems outside of Christianity. I work with a lot of different, I work at a major New York City metropolitan hospital. I've been there for almost 23 years. So I encounter on a daily basis, and I work with them directly, people of many different faiths, and I respect them. I may not necessarily believe what they believe in, but I can sit down and dialogue with them, and express to them what I believe in. But it's totally their prerogative, if they choose to switch teams, so to speak. But does that mean I don't associate with them? No. I think, with Christianity, it is about bringing people to salvation through Jesus Christ. But again, that's what I believe. There are agnostics in the world. There are faith seekers, spiritualists, what I call lukewarm Christians. Um, just people in general, atheists. I encounter a lot of atheists in my daily job, and so does that mean I don't want to associate with them? No, I try to educate them if they're amenable to it, in what I believe, but I don't try to ram it down their throat, because in Christianity it is about free will. It's what you know if you're a sheep of God, he knows his sheep.
No, no doubt about that. How important do you think it is in terms of gathering peace to have that connection to not just the rest of humanity, but to also the rest of Mother Nature as well? Because I'm a big fan of trying to stay in the communications with that is considered wildlife and things along
Oh,
those lines. And
yeah.
definitely, whether it's the birds or whether it's the rabbits, and we have a few of them here in North Carolina, or whether it's the pets that may, I don't have any currently, but when I've had pets, and definitely neighbors' pets, giving them some time and just observing, because I think sometimes God can and the ancestors can send us messages through a lot of those other animals as well. But how important do you think it is to have those connections?
Yeah. Um, that's an interesting thought, because I one of the losses that I've encountered was my dog, who was with us for 16 years, and so just and nature in general. That's what I mean when I say we have to find ways to decompress, and animals are very important to our emotional well-being. My dog serves such a major role in my life, in my own stability, and I used to love to go out, taking him for walks in nature. I think, me personally, Mark, I love the water. I love to sit next to and just hear the waves. I find that very soothing, very cathartic. So yeah, I love to get out there in nature and just be at one with the world. Some people may believe in a tree. We have people that are taking the 12 steps. That they have addiction issues, and they may not necessarily believe in God, but they believe in nature. They believe in the universe. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think nature's important. I think it really helps stabilize us and balance us, and is essential to all of our emotional well-being.
In terms of emotional well-being, I know one of the difficult things that can hinder emotional well-being is one, developing a relationship or finding a relationship and then maintaining a relationship, because we know communications, but also the fretting about finances and other things that are some of those worrying things can be an issue at the core of relationships and all in that space. So I'm just wondering how much of your coaching deals with that, and what are some of the ways that you try to get people to understand, one, the importance of communications, but also the importance of dealing with those issues before they become too much of a firestorm to help the relationship, whether that's a family relationship in the sense of father son, father daughter,
Yeah,
mother son, or whether that's spousal relationships as well. So I just
yeah,
wondering, sure you oftentimes have to deal with that, because that can be something that oftentimes is a major cause of the fretting
yeah.
that goes on in society.
Yeah, well, again, I have to bring that back to my faith. There's a saying, as most people know, the family that prays together stays together. And so, if you're not really on the same page, and listen, we all have our soul ties, right? And sometimes get to a point where we do get on the same page. Um, we get to a point where we become one in terms of what what we believe in. Like you may have a spouse that when you initially met them, you were going to church, but they weren't, right? And so throughout the duration of the relationship, that spouse comes along, and so there's more of a camaraderie when you're on the same page. So it is about communication, and if you meet someone, for me personally, I don't think I would do well at this age with someone that I'm not evenly yoked with, because that's where you could run into more potential problems. But if you're already in that situation, I think it's best to find ways to salvage that relationship as opposed to splitting up. I think, people are quick to throw in the towel, you know. I think finding ways to work through it is important. I think people give up on relationships too quickly, and that it's a matter of finding common ground. It's a matter of respecting each other, having empathy for each other, listening to each other. There's many things that a couple should really focus on in order to, keep that relationship intact as opposed to running from it. Can you hear me, Mark? Not not sure if I lost your signal.
Yeah, it was a lot. That's my fault. I was saying, what do you say to those folks that are worrying about the um, outside influences? Because a lot of times people will fret about and worry about what the outside forces are saying, and all along those lines. Because I was just wondering your thoughts around that. Because sometimes people will be worrying about what their friends are saying about their significant other, or what their friends are saying about their job, and sometimes that can add to problems as well. So I just wanted
Yeah.
your thoughts around that.
Yeah. So the more you root yourself in who you are in Christ, the more confident you are in yourself, right? So where uh, you you don't really worry what others think anymore, because you know who you are in Christ. You know who created you. You know who you should reach out to. I love Joyce Meyer. She's one of my favorites. She always says, don't go to the phone, go to the throne, right? So meaning when you have issues, and when you have these insecurities and you lack confidence, we shouldn't really be going first to our, not even our significant others. We should be going to God first. We should be asking him to instill, you know who we are. We should have that affirmation should come first from our creator. So I said all that to say, I can speak for myself. I personally, I've gotten to a point, I've really transitioned into another level of awareness. And so I don't really give much credence anymore to what people think of me. All that's important to me is what God thinks of me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And sometimes you got to do that, because sometimes people will stretch you thin if you allow them to stretch you thin. And I'm
Yes.
sure that you dealt with that as well, where people were
Yeah.
try to get you on their mission versus your own mission, whether that's a
Yes.
spiritual mission
Yes.
or a job or a
Yes.
life mission as well. So I do know that sometimes people will get you to go out and do their work versus the work that
Yeah.
you're supposed to be doing for yourself. And I didn't know if you've experienced that and how you have dealt
Yes.
with that.
Oh yeah. Yes. Yes. There's an element of control in that. And I don't do well with people trying to manipulate me and badger and cajole and control me. I'm not easily controlled anymore. There was a time in my life, perhaps, yes, but as I've grown in my walk and my relationship with Christ, I I don't allow anyone, within reason. Obviously, if I'm on a job, there are things, obviously, the policies and procedures we have to follow. But outside of that, within reason, I'm not all about being controlled on that level. I
Yeah.
think there's a way to work with people, but the minute I feel that control spirit, no, that just isn't something I feel we as humans, should have to really tolerate.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, I know we're winding down right now, but one of the things I get all my guests to do at the end of these interviews and everything is to share their ways that they can be contacted, the ways that they can have their publications obtained for those who would like to get a copy of your book and everything. And like I said, it is a global network, Pod TV is. So I always try to get, as one of my own personal missions, a message of positivity and hope. So you've given several of those during the course of this evening, but if you've got some others that you'd like to share in the sense of all the troubles that we're going through the world, I do try to have my guests give a message of positivity and hope that the rest of the listeners can take with them and hopefully have them have a better and a brighter day.
Yeah. Well, Mark, as you said, so I'm a new author. I have an upcoming book called Addiction, Steal, Kill, and Destroy, John 10:10, a spiritual guide to overcoming addiction and loss. And as I said, that is based on someone that passed away through addiction issues. And so that book is coming out within the next month on the market. I'm contracted with TBN, Trinity Broadcast Network, and so they're the ones that's publishing my book and promoting it. So look out for it in Barnes and Nobles and on Amazon. My website is www.valgalloway.lifecoach.com. I also have one, mindset and empowermentcoach.com. You can find me on TikTok. You can find me on Instagram as Coach Val. And my message is for everyone to just, you know, stay close to God and seek Him in all your ways, and you will find your life gets more peaceful, happier, and you will experience the abundance that God put us on this earth to experience.
Well, you've been an amazing guest. Hoping I can have a chance to get you back on in the near future. Hope you enjoyed our
I would love
conversation
that.
as much as I
I would
enjoyed
love.
it. But we're going to go out with a couple of ads, and a lot of them will have a spiritual base to them as well, including one about finances. But definitely there is one even about a game show that deals with the Bible as well. I'm going to go out with some of these and get us on out of here. But we're definitely looking forward to having you back on in the near future on both this show as well as some of our other shows as well.
Thank you, Mark, for having me. It was such a privilege chatting with you. I really enjoyed, this conversation with you.
I enjoyed the conversation as well. So let's check out as we get these spots to get us on out of here. And we'll be back with more exciting conversations later on this afternoon as well as later on this week. But another amazing guest, and definitely Miss Galloway gave us some great insights. And definitely, hopefully, you are taking these insights at term and definitely understanding the great ways that she is trying to get you to lead a better life. So that is always important to everybody. So right now, hopefully, folks are going out there and grabbing that book right now. But we're going to play a couple of these spots and wrap up this particular section of the online dinner party.
It's time for Bible or Babble. Gather round for your new favorite show. If you hear the word, show 'em what you know. Let's go. Bible or Babble. It's Bible. Let's go. All in every saint, we gon' put you to the test. See who know that B.I.B. a little best. Bible or Babble. It's Bible. Let's go.
How you holding up? Nothing wrong with getting help.
If I promise to look into it, will you drop it and help me build this fence?
Now you need my help.
If you or a veteran you know needs support, don't wait. Reach out. Find resources at va.gov/reach.